to everyone who is all over the world with us today. It's just not fair to pick one single time zone. So I'm going to go with good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our session on design thinking and coaching, the synergy. So before we go into our session, thank you, Vikram, especially for introducing what BusyBuds has done. Maybe I can share a little bit about what we have done as well. But first, I'm going to go into a couple of session norms that we covered in this session in order to best facilitate communication moving forward and for you to get the best possible experience, right? So what we look for is that you keep your mics off and your videos on. There will be moments where we ask you to participate as well. So then you can turn on your mics, mention your name before speaking, because there's so many of you on the screen. It really does help us connect with you, identify you, and respond to you personally. Plus, as you have all been doing so well, lighting up that chat box right there, use the chat box to communicate, reach out, not just to us, but to each other, because sometimes learning from each other is the best way we can make sense with what's going on. And last, but definitely not least, let's all practice virtual patience, because we know how in this online world today, many things can go wrong. Videos get frozen, people drop out of the call. In fact, Kathy wanted to give a little heads up to us today that she's been having a bit of internet connection issues earlier this evening. So if anything does get disrupted, even for a little while, don't worry, we'll get you guys back on track. And we ask that you hold patience in this space with us. Okay, now that we've got the session norms out of the way, let's go into introducing a little bit more about the work we do at BusyBuds Co., right? So we've worked with companies and individuals from Singapore, Australia, India, Germany, Netherlands, Bangladesh, Cambodia, and of course, our home ground, Malaysia. So working with an international crowd is not something that we're strangers to. Our work involves working with individuals, teams, and organizations to improve processes, people dynamics, and organizational systems for growth. And we do this through change consulting, bite-sized training sessions, and coaching. Alongside that, though, we do a lot of work on building a community of trainers and coaches just like yourselves. So these are for people who want to level up their abilities and experiment with new ways of delivery, especially since the pandemic hit delivery online, right? So that's enough about us. Let's go into a quick check-in before we begin our session of sharing. And your check-in question for today is, what is the most exciting thing about being a coach? I'd like to ask that you type it in and don't click enter just yet. I want everybody to click enter at the same time. So let's give ourselves a little bit of time here. I'm going to give 2 minutes on the clock. I'll let you know when that's up. What is the most exciting thing about being a coach for you? Type it in, and when I say go, we click enter at the same time. Kathy and I will participate as well. All right, I think a lot of us know what our happy space is. So I'm going to just keep it to another 10 seconds on the clock. Can I get a thumbs up if you've already keyed it in and you're ready to type it? Yes. Okay, lovely. Thank you for those who have not got their videos on. You're giving me the virtual thumbs up. I love it. All right, so let's go in 3, 2, 1, go. Enter. Whoa, look at that chat box just lighting up in the side. I love this. Okay, let's see what we've got. Bearing witness to another person's individual growth, discovery, and success. Laura, beautiful. Dawn, seeing the transformation in beliefs of clients. Renee, okay, learning about the experiences of others and helping them through challenges to shine even brighter. Constant growth, watching clients grow. So a trend or a pattern that I'm seeing here is growth, touching hearts. Everyone who's in this room is here because they want to contribute to humanity, to the lives of others. And you have at the center of all your answers, put your coaches, put their growth and their transformation ahead. So we're already on the right track towards design thinking. Let's find out a little bit more. Wait a minute, how does design thinking connect to all the answers that I'm seeing right here? Okay, beautiful. So I'm going to collect all these thoughts, and we're definitely going to harvest them to see what are some of those key ideas that really stand out to us. And with that, let's go into the rest of our sharing for today. Thank you, everybody, for all your contributions. So I want to introduce something that we do when we want to celebrate something that we've done together. Can everybody put their hands up and give me the silent applause? That's right. So every time we want to cheer someone on, this is sign language for applause. Great. So good job, everybody. Thank you for giving that energy to me to continue with the session today as well. So when we talk about design thinking, it's first important for us to understand what was the traditional approach to problem solving, right? So when traditionally in companies, when asked to problem solve, a lot of people look to answer two questions. Is this feasible? And is it viable? By feasible, I mean, do we have enough money? Can we cover the cost for this solution? Do we have the technology in order to carry out the idea that we need to carry out? But with design thinking, there is a third element that we need to look into it, and that is desirability. So I'm going to ask Kathy to change the slide. All right. So with desirability, this is where we see true innovation lie. It's not that it's desirability alone, but it is the combination and culmination of these three things: feasibility, viability, and desirability, which come together to form the human-centered approach to problem solving. So if feasibility is us talking about, costs, and viability is talking about, do we have what we need to enable the idea, desirability is all about human emotion. So with design thinking, it really is about what do people want and need first before we go into thinking about, does it make sense monetarily? Does it even make logical sense to apply in today's world? So design thinking is what we call the human-centered approach to problem solving. And it is more than just a framework or a process. It is one that you would have to experience to appreciate fully. However, for the benefit of trying to understand it on a high level first, we can break it down into three simple elements to see design thinking at play. So before I go on, I'd really love to know in the chat box as well, has anyone here had experience with design thinking, works in the realm of design thinking today, or has even heard about what this means? If you have, click in a yes into the chat box. All right, Renee. So if I have to drop out of this session for any reason, Renee is going to take over, guys. All right, you ready for that, Renee? Just kidding. So I see Renee's there, and for a lot of you, it must be the first time in order to understand what design thinking is really about. I'm so excited. It's always great to share awareness about what this is and the power that it has with people who have not heard about it before. So let's go into what are these three elements that I'm talking about when it comes to design thinking. Let's try to understand design thinking first from process. When it comes to the design thinking process, there are 5 steps that we follow. Right? So we go process, mindsets, and environment. So when it comes to the process, we have empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. If you were to Google design thinking right now, you would find 3-step process, 4-step process, 5-step process. The fact is there are many ways to approach design thinking, but the one that we're following is the one from the Stanford D-School model. It's actually where design thinking was kind of formalized, not exactly where it was born, because design thinking, it existed way before. I think some people trace its roots as far back as World War II. But what it means is design thinking is the way that designers think. Architects, artists, it's using their way of thinking in order to solve problems. So they came up with these 5 steps and put it together in a process. So empathize is one of the most important. Remember, we spoke about human desirability. Human desirability comes with empathizing with your user before you actually understand what it takes to form a solution for them. Now, this can all seem very confusing, but I assure you, we have a short story after this, which should paint a clearer picture of what design thinking can actually do. Next, we look at the mindsets. And this is something we're going to focus on a bit more today. In design thinking, there are 12 commandments that we try to follow. This was also put together by the Design Thinking School Network. It's not hard or fast rules, but it's definitely a good guide to have. Different mindsets apply at different parts of the process. So if I were to ask you to key into the chat box, based on what you see up here, out of the 12 commandments, what's one commandment that really stands out to you and resonates with you? It doesn't mean you need to understand it fully, but it could just be that it's something you read, you see, and you're like, oh, I think I feel this one. Sue, fail early and often. Yes. Don, think user-centric. We've got encourage wild ideas. Yes. Ari. So deferred judgment. All right. I see a lot of connection to, and you know what, guys, a lot of these things already connect to coaching. So it's going to be interesting when we go into our discussions later. For me, one of the mindsets that I connected to it the most and what made me even go into design thinking was I once saw a billboard that said, fail early and often. And I was like, what is this? Why are they asking me to fail early and often? And reading that simple billboard sent me down a huge rabbit hole into understanding the true power of design thinking. And from being a lawyer, today I'm a design thinking coach. All right, nicely done. Thanks for sharing, guys. Flexibility, Brenda Mayaka, thank you. Okay, let's go into environment. So when it comes to environment, design thinking is very purposeful, even in its setup. We look to have a modular space. People usually work in teams, and it's about 5 or 6 people in a team. A project challenge is revealed, and we get teams to actually solve the project challenge using the 5-step process and the mindsets you saw earlier. But in order to get through that, we actually have to set up the environment just right so that they can move through those steps and maximize what they're actually experiencing. So we've got high chairs just so that people can't sit down for too long. We never stay too long on a process. We use a time timer to keep everything moving along. How many of us here have sat through a meeting that went on way too long and didn't quite give us the outcomes we wanted? Can I see a show of hands? That was really fast, Sue. Peg, Don, Lavanya, yes. So design thinking even helps us move through that, right? And we love to use sticky notes and Post-its. That's something you'll see as well. So this is also because we don't want things to be set in stone. When we're going through the process, we do in order to learn. So when you put things out on a Post-it, it's very easy to change ideas around, switch things, and build on the ideas of each other, a mindset we learned about earlier. All right, so that's it when it comes to the tenets and the pillars of design thinking. So we've got environment, process, and mindsets. And when it comes to the process, it's 5 steps. The mindset is 12. The environment, it's really just about making sure that we can facilitate the best experience for everyone going through the process. And now I'm going to hand it over to my busy bud, Kathy, to take us through the rest.
Thanks, Belle. Did you want to finish up the key tenets before handing over to me?
Sure. So I'll just wrap that up before handing over to Kathy then. So when it comes to the key tenets of design thinking, the 3 things, despite the description and its name, design thinking, it actually focuses more on the doing rather than the thinking. It's also a lot more about problem framing first before we jump into problem solving. And finally, it asks not that we jump into taking action with a final solution in mind. Instead, it asks us to take action in order to experiment and discover more. Very often we are asked the question, I want a great solution and I want one now. Design thinking says, I need an idea to test if I'm even on the right track towards reaching the right solution. All right, thanks for that, Kathy. I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Belle. And as you can tell, yes, it is a bit of a process. Yes, it is a bit of, a few new things to grapple. And we're going to get to the point of, I'm sure the question really is blaring at the back of your minds right now of how does this relate to coaching? What am I going to do with this with coaching? And we're definitely going to be getting there. But I want to start with a quick story that probably will help cement this a little bit better. And so we're going to look at why does design thinking work in the coaching context? And we're going to start with this story. Ooh.
I'm just going to take over sharing screen from Kathy as well.
Thank you, Belle. So
All
Bill, I'm
right.
going to ask you to just skip ahead to the story, and then I'll get to the others. So you've got a sneak peek of what's coming up. Very nice. So there were a group of participants at the Stanford D School Design Thinking School, and they were doing a design thinking course, and they were working on a project, a problem that was about this, right? So each year, about 20 million premature and low birth weight babies are born, especially in developing countries. The mortality rates for these infants are particularly high because their incubators are extremely rare and sometimes just really, really expensive and hard to reach, right? And so with this, they started to frame their design challenge, and they asked themselves, how do we design a better incubator for the developing world, not just the developed world, but for the developing world? And they started by visiting the hospitals in Nepal, and this is what they found. This is what they noticed. So I'm going to ask if anyone can just tell me, what do you notice in this picture? You can type it into the chat box. What do you see? Any guesses? Incubators are all connected, cold, little contact, clear boxes, all the same size. I'm sure all of those definitely are somewhere along those lines. But the main thing that they saw was that the incubators were empty. There were no babies in these really well-developed incubators, right? And they quickly realized that most births occur in villages far away from the hospitals, with, you know, and they occur far away from hospitals with stable sources of electricity. So they went to speak to their users in these villages, really long hikes, really cold weather, to really understand the real problem. And they found out that mothers had to travel far with their babies from their villages in the mountains, and it's cold during the trek, and many infant lives are lost as they come down. And so this is the solution that the team came up with. Instead of incubators, they created the Embrace Infant Warmer. It uses phase change material that could be heated up by the mothers at home and wrap the babies, take them safely down to the hospitals in these really nice, tight, cozy warmers, right? And three things to note about these simple solutions. It was simple, it was impactful, and the team didn't just focus on the existing solution, which was the incubators, right? So what we want to relay across is that whether it's design thinking, whether it's coaching, we really need to keep our users' needs, in this case, the coachee's agenda, at the center of what you do. Because this allows the actual challenges that they're facing to surface. This allows us to stay focused on the challenge that they are bringing up, that is emerging, and to create impactful and relevant results to their situation. Because again, we all know here as coaches that every situation, every individual's experience is very different from another. So we're not going to be able to say one size fits all. And what really happens here is that without these conversations, the researchers might have created a better incubator. And that comes back to us as coaches. Without these conversations and really space for openness and emergence to happen, we won't be able to look at the real challenges and help them solve the real, create the proper solutions or the relevant solutions for their lives and their situation, right? And so back to that preview that we had, why does design thinking work in coaching? So if we look at this whole story, we realize that the user is at the center of the equation, right? And Bella's created these really nice slides. I'm going to ask her to share them. Yeah, so the user is at the center of the equation, and over and above all of those design elements, whether it's your process, whether it's your mindset, whether it's the environment, design thinking is a way of being. It is the belief that everything we do is with our user, our coachee, at the center of what we do. And just like in coaching, it is always about the coachee, never about us, never about the coach. And another thing that was really, really interesting for me to find out, because I didn't start off as a design thinking practitioner, it was only after I met Belle, right? So I started off as a coach and I got to meet Belle, and then we saw these really nice overlaps. But one thing that really stood out to me was a bias towards action. It gets us out of spending too much time with planning or thinking, planning, and it just stays these disconnected dots, but it gets us into the doing space, right? Like most of you responded in the chat box saying, fail early and often were some of the mindsets that stood out to you. To have wild ideas, encourage wild ideas, to think user-centric, and it seemed that fail early and often was a really relevant one. So when it comes to design thinking, and especially how I've seen it relate to coaching, to get away from the fear of I have to get the plans perfectly clear and perfectly right before I try something, to create that space for our coaching. And so when it comes to planning, as I'm sure most of you know, it's mostly based on our assumptions. It's mostly based on our biases and best case scenarios. But here with the design thinking methodology involved in it, or beliefs, it gets us into creating, testing, and getting feedback and getting our hands dirty, trying early as soon as possible. And another thing that I do want to share is in the design thinking and the coaching relationship, the way that it interrelates is in many, many ways. But for example, I would like to share a few. You can use coaching methods to coach a team of design thinkers through the process. So as a coach, you're stretching people, you're expanding possibilities, you're really helping them go beyond their limitations that are in their mind. You can also use coaching conversation tools within the design thinking empathy interview process. That's a process where we really look at understanding our users, much like the researchers at the Stanford design thinking course were doing. They really went to empathize with their users, right? And of course, you can use design thinking within the coaching process, right? And that's what we're going to get in today. So for the benefit of each one of you from all of the different places that you're calling in today, and with the time that we're given, we're going to be focused on using design thinking to expand possibilities within the coaching process. In other words, the synergy. And we're really going to dive into the mindsets. So we're going to send you out into breakout rooms. But what we'd like you to do in these breakout rooms is you will be assigned a mindset coach, one of these 12 commandments that we spoke about. And in your rooms, you will get to speak about, we'll send you into the first breakout room for about 10 minutes. And relating to that mindset, which will be at the top of your room name, you will talk about what does this mindset, what could it possibly mean? And how could it apply in a coaching context, right? So we're going to send you into these breakout rooms, 10 minutes. There will be about 3 to 4 of you in these breakout rooms. Have a conversation. We can also share this question into the chat box. What does this mindset possibly mean to you, and how would it apply in the coaching context? So I'm going to ask if there are any questions before you send you out. And let's see, any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask. No questions? Great. So then in that case, I'm going to ask Vikram if you could go ahead and open those breakout rooms. I see you shaking your head. If you're unable to, that's not a problem. We will help set that out. I don't know what you mean by. And then my phone suddenly spoke to me. So let me just get those breakout rooms set up.
Hi, Kathy. Do you want me to support with the creation?
That's okay. I am halfway there.
Great.
Really quickly, we'll get it in. But we will be focusing on think user-centric, go for quantity, defer judgment, looking at feasibility, viability, and desirability. We'll also look at how do we stay focused. And the last two are how do we build on ideas, as well as how do we encourage wild ideas. Okay. And with that, I'm going to open up the rooms. There might be some spelling errors, but that's okay.
Thanks for your virtual patience.
Myself.
So Renee, Kakoli, Peg, Dawn, do you have a breakout room assigned? Okay. Peg doesn't have one assigned. Maybe we can discuss it in this room then. Kathy, I think some people might not have their breakout rooms assigned yet.
Hold on.
Or they are, but they're not getting the notification.
They're not getting the notifications. So
okay. So maybe we can discuss in the main room then.
Yeah. Don, do you see any notification popping up for you? Not at all? Then that's fine.
That's fine. All right, so I'll assign a mindset for this room. Let's go with, let's see, be visual. Okay, so Peg, I know Kakoli is here with us as well. Dawn is back in the room.
Hi, Dawn.
Okay,
we realized that there was no one in your room because they were not getting the notifications. So we'll just have the discussion here.
All right, so Dawn and Peg, feel free to unmute yourselves and let's talk about what does be visual mean to you?
As far as coaching goes, it's for me, it would be to pay attention to the different things, movements that the client is doing on the other side, emotions that they're showing, nonverbal, verbal.
Very nice one. What about for you, Peg? What is that like? What does be visual mean? And it doesn't have to just be in the coaching context.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, loud and clear.
Okay, because my unmute button looks like I'm still muted. Yeah, I think it's I guess what strikes me, not to repeat some of what Dawn said, but was to really take into the whole person or all aspects of what is going on in the situation, and to, instead of just using my brain to describe something, to use more senses in order to convey something, because it's hard. I think visually, I with coaching, I often don't do that, maybe with charts or something like that. So for me, it would be more like using all the senses, not just the hearing or the thinking. I guess thinking really isn't a sense, but anyway.
Okay, nice. I love the interpretation that was given to be visual as well. So I'll tell you how it applies. You have the benefit of being in this room, I guess, so we can tell you how it also usually applies. I like the combination of what you both said. And Dawn especially, was such a new perspective to me to be able to see that be visual can be interpreted in that way. So usually in design thinking, be visual is very simply put, when we ideate or when we try to communicate something, we try to draw an image instead of write it down in just words. Because images tell better stories sometimes than a long paragraph or an essay would. Especially when we're...
A picture says 1,000 words, right? So exactly same thing applies.
And you know what, Kathy, how is it for you when you interpret be visual? Like, do you just see yourself doing that even before you became aware of the be visual process?
Yes. So I remember when I went through my coaching program, and I'm definitely grateful that I had many people around me who just came with so many different backgrounds, right? And one thing that struck out to me was how, like, okay, if you ask me to draw, I'm going to say, you know what, I'm terrible at drawing. I'm probably not going to put pen to paper and put it down. But when I saw someone facilitating a process, or she was just drawing her thoughts down, and I was just like, wow, that's so powerful to write down a feeling or to draw down this vision and this image that she had. And I tried that out. This is before I met Belle. This is before I knew about design thinking. And I tried that out in one of my coaching sessions, and, definitely not a surprise, but it got that person connecting to their image for themselves. I think the question that I asked was, how do you see your life journey as it has been so far? Could you draw an image? And they drew just this beautiful mountain and a river, and I was blown away by what they had drawn, because I don't think any word could have described that feeling that they had as they drew it. But that image just became such a huge part of, it was like a anchor towards the rest of their conversation, right? And so I think visuals just have such a power, especially when we start to use it and know it. It has such a power to transcend these words that, you know, we can possibly just figure out how to say some of these things, but it transcends our words and it goes into our feelings and emotions that have never been tapped into. So that was my experience using visuals and getting someone to draw out their plans and their ideas and their vision for themselves.
Nice one. Thanks for sharing, Kathy. Kakoli, you're in the room as well. I'd really love to hear how you interpreted the visual and what it means to you.
Actually, recently, we used River of Life. How our life, visual of our life has grown from, say, as a childhood to adulthood, and now at this stage. So at different stages, what it meant. And it's so powerful and so beautiful that all of us in the room, the participants, ourselves, we were so fascinated with that. And that helped us to look at our own strengths at each stage and evolution of the strengths. And that is what really in coaching as well. Now this thought really came up for me right now, that the strengths we operate from came through this visualization. And that's beautiful for me. That's reflection.
Wow. Thank you, Kakoli. I just feel like I want to sit with that sharing that you just gave as well. Dawn or Peg, Smriti, we haven't heard from you, Smriti. We'd like to hear what your thoughts are too, since you're in the room with us.
Sorry, I was just focused on the technical part.
All right, no worries, Smriti.
We're realizing some things are happening.
Okay, so I would not want to disturb you then if you're managing that. I think I'd like to ask Peg and Dawn and also Kakoli, based on what we've each shared with each other, was there any new thoughts that came up for you?
Yeah, that is what I said, that now I'm seeing merger of everything together. That's in the coaching, and whether I'm using this design thinking or T group, all these ideation is merging together. Everything is putting together. That's where the beauty is coming to me.
It's a confluence.
Right.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a confluence and congruency that I see.
The other thing that occurred to me was, I think visual things, for me anyway, they often evoke emotions. So I think it maybe taps into a different part of my brain than just words do. And so I would hope that would create more possibilities or more creativity.
Done. Go ahead.
So for me, I like the thought of having a client draw, especially if they are artistic and feel comfortable with drawing, to see what that would bring to a session.
So that's an interesting thought for me. It makes me think about comfort with being able to draw as well, right? Because I know for a fact that a lot of people might not even be comfortable to draw. So I remember one thing I tried doing with someone, like when I coach design thinking, that's one of the hardest things to get them to do. And I'm like, okay, when it comes to ideation, you've got to try though, because remember at the beginning of our design thinking coaching, I'd always set the context. Design thinking is about stepping outside your comfort zone. Growth is entering the uncomfortable space. So a baby step in stepping into the uncomfortable space might be draw an animal that best represents your personality right now. And having everyone do that in a team helps create psychological safety for all of us to participate. Alternatively, and this just occurred to me as you guys were talking about it as well, what if as a coach and coachee, if you're having a one-on-one, as a coach, I draw something in order to make the coachee feel comfortable to draw something. So thanks for sparking that, ladies. Oh, we're having some people back in the room already. Nice.
Welcome back, ladies. We hope
Hi,
your
Brenda.
conversations were enriching. Great to
How was
see
your
you.
conversation in the room, Brenda? What was something that emerged for you? I'm going to ask you to unmute, Brenda.
I was sharing with the ladies, I didn't know like a lot of stuff, especially if we were looking at technology. I came to this session so that I probably could pick up and learn new information. But I did share the fact that because of the COVID situation now, everybody's having to learn a new way of doing things, a new way of presenting stuff to people. So I find a lot now, instead of in person, and my daughter does training also, you're doing more of Zoom meetings. You're having to find new technology, new ways of presenting materials, a new way of delivering it, that it keeps the people attention. I'm a minister at our church, and so because we did not go to church in over 1.5 years, and now people have gotten comfortable in being at home and not necessarily coming into a building. So you have to find new way. You have to come up with new ideas or making stuff looks good to them so that you want to keep them engaged and be an active part of, as I could probably say, as that learning environment, because I am even homeschooling my grandchildren now. So I use a lot of virtual stuff for them. So I mean, I have a lot of ideas with, but I'm always willing to learn new things.
Okay,
so
nice one.
whatever
Thanks for the
anybody else
sharing.
so whatever anybody's bringing to the table, my ears are open. One of the things I picked when you get the 12 commandments was flexibility during this period of time, because so many people are looking for things to be back to normal. And I don't think it's going to be back to what they consider normal before pre-pandemic. So we have to look at what's happening now during pandemic and post-pandemic. And there's got to be, you got to be flexible in order to be able to make it through.
Right. So part of the 12 commandments for you, what you feel is really important is, despite what's up there, it's about being agile, flexible, quick to adapt, right? And
Yes.
you know what, one of the, that's actually design thinking as a whole asks us to do that. So it's like you encapsulated exactly what the 5 process is asking for. In order to go through a solutioning process, what it says is go for quantity, for example. We always look for what are the best possible solutions or the best ideas. But sometimes in order to get to the best, it means coming up with as many ideas or many thoughts as possible. So even you having that conversation with your daughter, having conversation with other trainers and facilitators in the space, being able to collect a large quantity of ideas before deciding, okay, I'm going to try different things out and see what works best for me. That in itself is already holding a design thinking mindset in play. So thanks for that sharing, Brenda. Really nice. Go for quantity is also a very interesting mindset, because a lot of people, when we come to ideation, we always think about going for quality. Every time we want to do something, it's like, how much quality can I bring to the table? But when in design thinking, we say, there's a time for quality, but it comes later. First, let's go for quantity to make sure that our options are there. In coaching, or in the method of coaching that Kathy and I have learned, it's one of the principles that we follow, which is expanding possibilities, right? So as a coach, when it comes to expanding possibilities, you can talk about going for quantity before thinking about quality. Let's see, I'd like to call on 2 other people as well to share. So I'm going to call on Lavanya. I see you over there. Lavanya, can you tell me what was the mindset discussed in your group, and what is one thing that emerged for you in your discussion with your team?
So Belle, if I can call you that.
Of course.
Right. So we had go for quantity mindset. And one of us did have that block that, I choose quantity over quality over quantity. It started from there, and then it went to what is divergence, many possibilities, because there is a stage where you need to really bring in diverse ideas and then, test the waters as to where we are, and then go forward. So exactly what you said. So I think that's what we came up with. So, and what really resonated with me was, expanding the view, the pathway to the coaching, asking several questions, standing there, focusing on the body, going beyond the rational mind, and also seeing what's happening in the body. Was part of something that I got from our group discussion with Roger and Kimberly.
Nice. Thanks for sharing and for also acknowledging your group mates, Lavanya. So I think, that resistance some of us initially face with the, oh my God, I need to go for quality before quantity. The fact that it even comes up, imagine what that could be like for some of our coachees as well, even as we take them through the process of expanding their possibilities and I like how you took quantity, not just to mean many things that I see in front of me, but many planes of operating beyond my body, on a spiritual level, inner level, and with my environment and reality. I hope I understood that right, and that is how I encapsulated what you shared with the group. Thank you, Lavanya. And next, I think I'd like to hear from Chris. Chris, I see your video on. It's good to see you, Chris. Tell us, what did your group discuss and what emerged for you?
Oh, I gotta try and remember. Someone help me with it.
Go ahead. Call on one of your teammates to help.
Something centric. I forgot what
Think user-centric.
Think user-centric.
Yes. So I think the essence of our group was whatever environment, whatever circumstances, it's really the individual that we're focused on. And I guess that would be simple bottom line of it all. It's just, the individual is a human being, whatever environment that they're in.
Thanks for sharing, Chris. So true. So when it comes to think user-centric, some of the other things I've heard emerge from people usually is, when you're so focused on the objective of the coachee instead of our own objectives, that's being user-centric, right? And when we are able to be present for them, it means we're not struggling with what question to ask next. It allows us to be 100% present in the room or in the space with our coachee in order to communicate with them. And if we're fully present, we're able to better listen on multiple levels. So just a simple mindset of put your user first or put your coachee first in this situation allows us to practice so many of the skills that are essential to being a really good coach. And that's where design thinking and coaching really meet in the center. So thanks for that sharing, Chris. I think I'm gonna take us through the next question now, which is, I would like us to go back out into groups, and this time what we're going to discuss, possibly we'll send this for about 6 minutes instead due to time constraints. Is that okay, Kathy? Yeah. We're going to really quickly and go for quantity here, guys. Thankfully, we just discussed this idea. It's not about how great an idea is. It can be the most ridiculous, worst possible idea in the world. We want to hear it. It could be a magic wand. It doesn't matter, because what we want to see a quantity of ideas of possible ways we could apply these mindsets in our coaching practice. And what you'll be able to do after you go for quantity is that there may be some hidden gems that you might not have realized had you not gone for quantity and discussed this in your groups. All right, so I encourage you to go in with an open mind and go for quantity, guys. You're going to go back into the same rooms, discuss the same mindsets, but this time you're going to think about how can we apply these mindsets in our coaching practice? What are some tangible steps you might want to take? All right, I'll see you back here in the main room after the breakouts. Have fun, everyone.
Laura's alone.
All right, so I think this time we have only Peg back here in the room with us. So Peg, are you okay to still participate with us, or shall we bring Dawn and
Okay, Dawn's with Laura now.
Yeah, I just moved
And so is
Dawn
Kaka.
and yeah.
Great. Okay. So I think the only person who doesn't have a room is probably Peg, and Ruchika is with us. Hi, Ruchika.
Ruchika is not doing too well, so she's not going to be in the
Okay.
breakout room, but she can stay with us.
You can stay with us, Ruchika.
Peg,
And
you are muted at the moment, so I'm just going to ask you to unmute.
And I am
oh,
so sorry.
she cannot even unmute herself. Remember, something is wrong with her
Okay.
mute and unmute button. So Peg, you know what I'm going to ask you to do, and to make sure you feel involved in the process, even for Ruchika as well, if you want, let's have a silent brainstorm where we brainstorm on our own. And what we're going to do is any idea that comes to us, I want you to key it into the chat box and share it with us. Okay, so remember, just go for quantity, keep typing, and Kathy and we're going to do the same and participate with you. You're going to type
And
some of
Ruchika,
our
feel free to still work on the what you were discussing earlier, the mindset you were discussing earlier. Peg, you can continue discussing about be visual.
So Peg will be discussing be visual, and she can just list down a couple of ideas that she has for that.
And Ruchika will be build wild ideas. Is that right?
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So also build. Okay, I'm going to go with be visual as well.
We'll go with wild ideas. Smriti and Vikram, feel free to join us too in the brainstorming.
I'm not able to access my chat as well. This is terrible. So I'm just going to enjoy it.
Okay, sure.
I think Peg is feeling the same thing. She as well is showing signs that she can't access, she can't do anything.
She can't even type on the chat. You know what, Peg? Write
Can
it
you
down
hear
if you
us?
can even. It looks like she can hear. She can't
Okay.
hear. Oh, you can hear. You
Okay.
can hear. Okay. So it's great that you can hear. You know what?
Your pen and paper is going to be
Pen
the
and
best
paper
thing
is
right
fine too. Just whatever
You're doing
helps
some-
jog
you're
your.
you're doing some live design thinking with us right now.
We're going for quantity on possibilities.
Yes. In ideation, there's a specific tool in design thinking that we call adding constraints, because we believe that adding constraints actually pushes the creative muscle. So this group has had the most constraints added on it right now, with Vikram unable to access the chat. Peg is not able to access the chat. Look at us. I'm one step short from getting Peg to like just send me a personal WhatsApp. I'm going to WhatsApp you my number if you want to send that over. Okay, with my international code. So you are lucky, Peg, Ruchika as well in the room. You get my phone number anytime you want to tap into me for design thinking. You know who to call. All right, so let's see. We've got WhatsApp. I also love constraints because I think about things like, oh, maybe we could play charades to guess what the idea is. So that's another way of being visual, right? We always think about being visual as just drawing, but I think it was Dawn earlier who said being visual is also about how you observe a person. So observing how much Peg feels like she's struggling, but at the same time, she keeps smiling through it all. That tells me a lot about if I were coaching Peg, you know, the type of person that she is. And I would tap into Peg. You know what I noticed? I noticed that you're someone, one of your strengths are that even through adversity, you seem to be able to smile through it gracefully. I wonder how, yeah.
Peg sales with her husband. So maybe there's a powerful visual
wow.
metaphor right there.
I am now actually picturing
No matter
Peg
the
on a
current,
boat.
no matter the resistance, she continues pushing forward.
Oh, I've got to try drawing that out actually. Can we actually do that on a whiteboard? Let's have some fun, guys. So I'm gonna share screen. I think it's from share
Okay, go
screen, right,
ahead.
Kathy?
Share screen,
Whiteboard.
the second one is whiteboard.
Okay, got it. Let's do this. Okay, I'm really not good. I can't even remember what a sailboat looks like, so it's gonna be the most. That's the sail billowing in the wind, right? I should add some wind in there too. Yeah, that's the wind. And here are the waves. And guess what's the most important part of this drawing? What is the most important part? The ever lovely Peg. So I think Peg would probably have her hair blowing in the wind as well, right? Let me do that. Oh, I can't keep drawing this. Yeah. Okay. It's all blowing in the same direction. She feels so free. Process is the wind and the sail. I see Vikram's got access. I like the little hair flip. My goodness.
Back in action.
Ta-da! And we're gonna show everybody this lovely drawing as they come into the room. I am actually, so guys, this is I'm gonna try a process right here. It's called prototyping. So remember I said as a coach, in the process of Be Visual, I would want to draw first in order for my coachee to feel like they're comfortable to draw. So I need to get comfortable with that. And I'm now drawing the best way I know how to a room full of potential people that I'm coaching here. And I'm experimenting. So I'd like to have your feedback. Peg, with visual cues, can you show me how did me doing this drawing make you feel? Oh. Oh wow, this
There's a lot of passion in that.
there's so much emotion that's just flowing out. Thank you. And you know what? This
It's
makes me think
thoughtful.
about an experience I once tried to prototype. So welcome back everyone who has come back into the room. The people in this group were having a lot of
Everyone's
technical
back.
difficulties. So let's just give you a little context about what was happening. We were discussing Be Visual, and Peg, she can't access her mic. She can't access the chat. She was unable to participate or give ideas. So we decided to move into a different space of playing around and working. And someone informed me that Peg likes to sail. So as part of the Be Visual group, I decided to, draw Peg in a sail. That's Peg right over there with the hair blowing in the wind. And we're showing each other the power of what visuals can do. We also discussed how visuals are not just something that we draw, but how we behave. So Peg visually showcased to me how she felt because she can't turn on her mic. All right, so I'm going to end our group debrief there with that. Kathy, over to you for the rest of the debrief with the gang.
Thank you, Belle. So I would love to hear from everyone. How was that experience? What were some of the ideas that you came up with in your breakout room? So I'm going to call on a few names that we haven't just heard from yet. So let me see if I can get Peggy. Peggy, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Sure. Our group, the topic is Deferred Judgment. So in our first round, we talked about what does that mean at both the coach's level and the coachee's level, how we can each go into a situation with judgment and with the idea that we have limited options or we have these solutions that we want to impose as opposed to being truly open-minded. So then in the second discussion, we talked about, well, what are some of the coaching techniques we could use to defer judgment. So set aside what we come, right? But just be open-minded. So we talked about the quantity versus quality. And the idea is that we brainstorm in such a way that we throw out so many options out there that, if we come into the space thinking we have 2 options and now we have 10, and how that might shift the energy and asking the client to maybe pick 1 or 2 and just to experiment for one day, like how would you embody this view? If you had no limitations and just do it for one day, what would that do for you? So it's, that's an element of also bringing back to their body, and us as a coach feeling centered, but also inviting them to be centered so that we truly go, dive deep into their desires versus what they think that they want when they come into each session.
I really love that it was not just about getting them to defer judgment as they ideated in the session or creating the possibilities, but also deferring judgment into action, right? Because a lot of times it might be easier to defer our judgment just to write things on a piece of paper or to speak about it. But then you took it beyond the constraints of the session itself into not just their lives, but into their body and how they feel as they try these things out. For everyone who is leaving, we really appreciate you being here in the session so far, and thank you for your presence. It really means a lot to us. We're gonna go through this debrief, and then we're gonna do a wrap up and finish off, I think, in another 5 to 7 minutes. So that's for the rest of you to know how long we're gonna take as well. Thank you so much, Peggy, for sharing. I would love to hear from Laura.
Hello, I was going to say good morning, but it might, I know it's not morning for most of you. In our my first group, I got into another one, so it was great. I got to experience two different kind of discussions. But one thing that I thought we had a lot of energy around was related to staying focused. And particularly thinking about the environment that our coachee is in. So, there has to be opportunity on the other end. So sometimes you can have somebody who's working as hard as they can. They've done all the training, have all of the qualifications, and for whatever reason, maybe because there's one opportunity, there were 4 candidates, or some of the more real things that we are present in all of our communities, racism, misogyny, patriarchy, whatever it might be, so that someone is not internalizing that lack of success, if you will, as a failure, or that they're on the wrong path, knowing that that just may not be the right environment or right door for them to open to help folks stay the course, was something that we really felt a lot of energy and purpose and value. Yeah.
I love that it was on the intention, on the intensity, and on their journey, as opposed to the environment that they may be going into. And so often we do forget, and I think that's where a lot of our coachees do get dismayed, because they have all of these grand ideas and grand ways that they want to move forward, and then they go back into the environments and realize that there's a huge gap, that disappointment gap between their desire and their reality. And so I like that you were staying focused on their intention and the intensity of their journey. So that's really beautiful to hear. Thank you so much, Laura. And last 2 people, if I could hear from Roger, then we'll hear from one more. Roger, I'm going to ask you unmute.
Unmute. Yeah, I think I'd like to pass today, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
That is absolutely fine. Thank you so much. And in that case, let me hear from Usha.
Hi, hello everyone. Yeah, we discussed about deferred judgment for first round, and when the client is coming in, I thought that they are in a vulnerable position and being a victim, and how to give space for them. And even after the discovery form, I just say them, when during the discovery form, I say, it's not for any judgmental or any criticizing. There is no right or wrong. So it gives them a space to breathe, to be themselves. And that helps them, and that gives a different perspective also for them. And maybe after the process, when we are dealing with the expanding a view or any shadow work, maybe to reality check, can check with them where they are and where they at that point, and where they want to be when any similar situation comes up. And if there is any certain percentage residue is there, then sometimes the client may not be ready to face the situation in the future. So then there is a check for them and for me also, where they need to work on.
Beautiful. I like that you touched two things. So one is the area of improvement in the conversation. And I think one of the most beautiful statements that you said was it allows them to breathe. And there absolutely is so much freedom when we start deferring judgment, whether it's about ourselves or about the situation that we're in. I know I've been in that situation where I thought someone was going to judge me for a mistake. And the moment they didn't, just how much freedom I felt, right? And so that statement of being able to breathe is not just it's not just a process that they go through, but it's such a physiological experience as well. And that does something into their human and the ideas that come forth from them. So thank you so much, Usha.
Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. So I love that. I think the best thing that I am seeing come from this group and from these conversations is how you have all taken it into the being. And it's not just staying as a process. Many times we get so overwhelmed by a new process and a new idea or a new thought that it just stays as, okay, how am I going to use these applications or these new tools, in an interesting way, that each of you brought it into your being and into your essence as a coach. And so we really appreciate that. And that's what we hope you take away from this session, because at the end of the day, it is at the core of it, being there for your coachees and expanding the possibilities for yourself and them. And so we're going to close out with our final reflection of the day. And this is just a very quick one. So I'm going to ask Belle if she's able to bring that up. Thank you.
Already there?
Thank you. And so there are just 6 images right over here. I'm not going to ask you to annotate on the screen. What I'd like you to do is, let's say image from the top left to the top right is 1, 2, 3. Red is 1, green is 2, blue is 3, and then likewise, purple is 4, pink is 5, and yellow is 6. So go ahead and type in, how are you feeling right now after this whole session? What is the sense that stays with you as you leave this session? You can just put down the number or the color in the chat box. And as you put that number and color, you can also write what that means to you. Chris, I like that you've written blueberry. Whereas it's number 5, the pink balloons. So if you could also write down, what does that mean to you? Because to Laura, blueberries means my breakfast and she's nourished from the session. For you, Chris, blueberries could mean something completely different. I'm going to ask a few people to unmute themselves and share. Let's see if we can get Kimberly. Kimberly, we've not heard your voice today. It will be great to hear. How are you feeling? Yellow.
Well, I admittedly was attracted to 3 and 6 only.
Is it because of the food, the fruits?
Well, just the aesthetics of them.
Right, and so you picked yellow.
I feel like I only had 2 choices, which is maybe the opposite of expansion. I feel I wrote ideas, and yeah, I mean, I'd love to just be even in the space of people collaboratively thinking out loud and exploring and relating to colorful pictures. I mean, it's all part of, I mean, I definitely made a connection today at the end, listening to people after the second breakout room, where always remembering that it's not just about my client's expansive thinking, but my own expansive thinking while coaching. Because every once in a while I get into this narrow track of what I think is going on or what I think my client needs. And that is a bad track for me because it's up here.
I feel you there. I know I go into that as well sometimes. So totally relate to you. And that's absolutely true. It's not just expanding the possibilities for our clients, but being able to drop all of the things that are constraining us. So that's very nice. Thank you, Kimberly. And also yellow is my favorite color. So maybe that's why I chose you. So let me see. I'd like to hear from one more person. Renee, if you could share, I like that you wrote purple. Are your swirling thoughts, and what are some of the thoughts that are swirling in your mind right now?
Yeah, sure. So I do a lot of leadership development work, and we use design thinking for projects in healthcare. We teach a lot of people around design thinking. I don't teach that, but I've also done some coaching. And so I thought that this was really interesting to sort of bring together two different bodies of work and just see how they connect. And so I really liked this introduction and think it gives me a lot of additional things to continue thinking about and ruminating on.
Nice. If there's one thing that you, out of all the swirling thoughts in your mind, if there was one thing that's the biggest, like that word cloud, what would that biggest thought be?
I think something around how to, I don't know, I'm thinking about the brainstorming a bit. I don't know how to really do that, like the brainstorming and deferring judgment. And I think we do that some, but I think there's an opportunity to consider that a bit more.
I'm glad that you take away not just thoughts and ideas, but also a desire to start acting on something and experimenting with something. So if anything else that you have a desire to experiment, I find that a win from this session. So, and with that, we'd like to thank each one of you. We'd really like to thank Leadership That Works for being with us and for calling us into this space. We really do appreciate not just being given the opportunity to speak and to share the things that have benefited our lives and just added so much color into our lives, but to speak to such brilliant and wisdomous people in this room and to see how deeply you went with these thoughts and very simple concepts. And of course, Belle is sharing with you in the chat box how you can connect with us on LinkedIn, and feel free to search Busy Butts Go wherever you'll be able to find us. But we really appreciate you and we thank you, and just much love, much thankfulness, and stay safe. And I'm going to hand it back to Vikram. Before that, I'm going to ask Belle if you have anything else to close out with.
No, just a really big heart of gratitude for everyone who's been in the space and who stayed with us till the very end. Like I said, I'll be more than happy to connect with everybody in this room because I know I've already felt connected. So I like when someone said, "Can I call you Belle?" And I'm like, yes, go ahead, because that's how tight we are now. So stay safe wherever you are. And it was a pleasure to have your presence in my life today.
Thank you so much. I don't want to keep anyone more here, but we're going to invite you again to do a deeper process with us. So thank you so much for your presence today. This was fun for me. Really appreciate.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.